Two wives, two special wives, two wives to run with, have fun with, and grow with. Two wives, that's the way it should be. One day you'll find out two wives is what life is all about. You'll find two wives who are living just for you. Two wives, two special wives, two wives to run with, have fun with, and grow with. Two wives, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. I've mentioned this strange association before, but I'm thinking about it again this morning at about 10 minutes before 8 a.m. on the 21st of August, 2026. Let me repeat that I had this African American friend when I was working in this office and doing a very low-level clerical job, below the level of her job as secretary. And she had become my friend in this office. Strangely, among the other secretaries in this room, she was the one who becomes my friend. And what was notable about her only child, a son, had died of what? Of AIDS. And she was telling me that her son was not a homosexual, as people might have thought, and yet he died of AIDS. Okay. Strangely, this guy who discovers later that I had been being male raped while I was an adolescent and thus made to look as if I were a homosexual when I wasn't. I make friends in this office with this one person who has a son who dies of a disease people associate with homosexuality when she is saying her son was not a homosexual. Okay, so one of the ways she used to look at reality, and she was a Christian, which I'm not, but she would say, I'm glad God showed me that. If she somehow discovered something that looked like revelation to her from this entity she was calling God. Well, I've found that that's a nice expression, and I use it myself. So I want to say that what I'm about to say, I'm glad, and let me say it this way, Hashem showed me that. Now, here's what he showed me. Back when I was around 22 years old, I had run into this girl outside a classroom before the class was to begin at the University of Maryland. And the class was on Indo-European philology. Okay, because I was very interested in languages, and I was studying Italian, Latin. I took a couple classes in German, and I was an English major. So I was very interested in languages, and in my final semester as an undergraduate at the University of Maryland, I took this class on Indo-European philology. And I'm not going to try to explain what philology is. Now, it has to do with the study of languages. Now, as originating from a language that we'll call Indo-European. Okay, so I was standing outside this classroom, alone in a hallway. The door to the classroom was locked, so I couldn't go in. As I was standing there, this person arrived in the same hallway and took a place a few feet away from me, across the hall that we were standing in. Now, I was standing down from the doorway to this classroom, so in a way, this was, now that I think of it, a kind of a peculiar place for this person to have decided to stand, because you would think that she would have gone down to the classroom and tried to open the door, or maybe she did and I just didn't notice. You know, I don't know, but I looked up at this person, and it was what I thought was just a gorgeous woman. And so here's what happened. The minute my eyes rested on this person, let's call this my sexual member, immediately rose from complete rest to erection. In like within seconds, it went straight up at the sight of this woman. Now, this had never happened to me before. In fact, what was characteristic about me and women, I never became excited this way in the presence of a woman. I liked women. I fantasized sex with women in private. Never men, always women, and normal sex, okay? And I looked at pictures of naked women in the usual place at that time, which was a magazine called Playboy, which I would buy once in a blue moon because it was so embarrassing to purchase at that time. And so what was characteristic of me was that, like in a conversation with a woman, I didn't start to get excited sexually in any way. No tingle, no nothing. And I didn't realize until later that this was peculiar about me. Okay, so I had never been in a relationship with a woman. I was 22 years old. And this may have been the reason that I never got excited sexually in their presence. That may have been the reason, but I don't know. But I don't think it was the reason, but I'm not going to go into that. So what was really, really odd and unusual, and this never happened to me again in my life, okay, like this. I'm saying that it was almost miraculous what happened at that moment. And, well, I was so embarrassed that my sexual member had risen up this way and made a bump in my pants that I believe was visible, and this had never happened before. I turned and walked out of that hallway, away from that woman. Now, the woman and I entered the classroom. Well, by the time I got back to that hall, she was in the classroom. The door had been opened. So she attended the class like 2 times and then dropped out. So I had been thinking maybe I'll be able to get into a relationship with this woman, and she dropped out, and that was it. I wasn't going to see her again. Well, as it turned out, a year later, in the fall of, or near the fall of 1976, I'm in this restaurant. Now, the restaurant was a Greek restaurant, okay? And I had never been in this restaurant before, nor did I ever frequent the shopping center where this restaurant was located. And this shopping center was not far from my home. I could have frequented it, but I never did. And I'd never been in that restaurant before. Now, I went to the restaurant with a friend of my younger brother 4 years because I ran into this friend. I had just happened to be at my parents' house, and he and his family had lived directly across the street from us. And I had graduated from the University of Maryland the year before, and now I was going to start graduate school, and he had just graduated from high school and was going to start college. Now, he was not a friend of mine, but we started to chat, and we said, let's go to a place and have a snack together. So this was odd too, but we drove together, I guess in my car, and I went to this restaurant for some reason. And he didn't suggest it, I just went there, and we went in and sat down at a table, and then this woman I had seen outside that classroom a year before, she came to our table as the waitress. So I asked her out, even though she seemed to have an engagement ring on, but as I've said in recordings like this one, I didn't know anything about those rings on a woman's hand, so for all I knew, it was just a shiny ring. I didn't know it was an engagement ring. I honestly didn't. I didn't know that it was. And it turned out to be because when I asked her if I could see her again, get to know her maybe, she said, oh yeah, I'm breaking up with my boyfriend. Okay, come back and we'll talk. Okay, so who had given her that engagement ring? Well, that day I saw her outside that classroom, we were in class had started, and then this guy comes into the room, and she says to the professor, raising her hand, this is my boyfriend, can he sit in? And the teacher says, okay. So this boyfriend, he's the one who gave her the engagement ring, okay? So I come back to the restaurant to see her, as she said I might. And when I arrive in the parking lot, I see that very guy. He's barefoot, and he doesn't look happy. And he like storms into that restaurant. He doesn't see me or know that anything about me at all, but I see him, and he goes into that restaurant, and I'm thinking, there's the boyfriend. And I waited in my car, thinking, I don't know if I should go in there. She told me to come back at another time and talk to her, and there's the boyfriend. So I waited in my car, and then he came out unhappily and went off. So it turns out that things did not work out between me and this woman. And I got to say that I'm glad God showed me that I saw the guy who had apparently given her this engagement ring. He was the same guy who came into that class. And let me just stop right there and say, I'm glad God showed me that. Now, here's the peculiar thing I want to say. Now, I started into graduate school in the fall, and I got a job at a Washington bureau of a major American newspaper located in the National Press Building in Washington, D.C. Now, the way I got this job was I went to the Career Center at the graduate school where I was about to start classes, and I got the yellow pages out from the phone book, and I looked up the National Press Building in there, and there was like a 2 to 3 page list of newspapers all located in that National Press Building. And I was thinking, I'm going to have to work while I'm in graduate school. If I get a job in the news business, that'll help me find employment after I get my degree. So I got access to a phone in the Career Center there, and I called every single newspaper on that list. There must have been 3 pages of newspapers in tiny print located in that building. At that time, the newspaper business was still a paper business. There were no computers yet. So that building was filled with newspapers from all around the world and all around the United States. And I called each number there one at a time. It took me like 3 days, calling all day long. And as a result, I believe I got 3 positive responses, and I landed a job with this Washington bureau. So I started to work there, and I was a copy boy, and mainly I worked at the elbow of this librarian who had a very important job at this place. She was like the computer today for newspaper men, I'm sure. They can get access to all the information they want by a database either kept by their place of work or a database that their place of work has purchased for them to get all the information they need when they need facts to make sure their articles are factually correct. So I was at the elbow of this librarian, and as it turned out, even though she was 27 years older than I was, she and I got into a sexual affair. And I didn't want to be in it, but I couldn't find a woman still. And I was now around 25 years old, so after that experience with that woman outside that classroom where I'd had that instant response to what I saw as her beauty, several years had now passed, no woman for me. And so I agreed to be in this relationship with this woman who was hot for the relationship, and she was hotly pursuing me every single day at work until I finally way I say this, I gave in, even though that sounds weird for a man to say. I did give in. I didn't want to be in this relationship, but I gave in because I said to myself, I'm on a desert here. I can't find a woman, and at that time I was practicing complete abstinence from all sex. No, what Freud would call, what was his term? I can't remember now. Usually I have this at the tip of my tongue. No self-abuse, as it was called by some, and no prostitutes, no sex at all. Okay, so I was exploding, if you will, with sexual desire since I am fully capable sexually, and I am one who has a great appreciation for the beauty of the opposite sex. So I was exploding inside with desire. And this woman, even though she was 27 years older than I was, well, I don't need to say more. So we were in this relationship for 2 years and it ended. And then several years passed, and about a year after our relationship ended, I was involuntarily committed by this man who I say had been male raping me during my adolescence in a completely unjust and fraudulent proceeding that I say now was a murder attempt. And I had gone through that, and one day I was driving on the road that went from that restaurant I was mentioning before in that shopping center. There's a road that goes from that shopping center through neighborhoods and leads right by the apartment where this woman I had the affair with lived. And I'm driving down that road, and I see her walking along the sidewalk there. The 27-year older than me woman I had the affair with. So I stopped and got her attention and told her I'd give her a ride home in my car, and I did. So I ran into her again. And here's what I want to say. It was several years, not a year, but I ran into her again, you see. And it was near that restaurant where I had run into the beautiful woman again as well. So the same kind of thing happened where I could say, well, I did see this woman 27 years older than I was again after our affair had ended. Now, I had wanted to continue as her friend, even though our relationship was going to end. I saw no reason why we shouldn't stay in touch and remain friends, but she didn't want to. And, well, anyway, now that I think of it, she was walking from that shopping center to her apartment, and I got to say, it suddenly now occurs to me, I didn't think of this till now, the distance from that shopping center to her apartment might have been longer than the distance from the house I lived in later, within walking distance to her apartment, when I've mentioned this before. She had said to me, the reason she didn't want to stay friends with me after a relationship ended was because She said if her husband found out he would divorce her, well, as it turned out, she did divorce his husband while I was living where? Within walking distance to her house. And now it suddenly occurs to me, the walking distance from my house to her apartment was probably less far than her walk from that shopping center there, where she was clearly walking home from, and she told me she had been there. It was less far than that. So now I can say, even though I was going to say this anyway, but I can say with more confidence, I'm glad God showed me that. Because I've been saying that this woman was, in my view now, predatory in her relationship with me. I didn't want that relationship at all. And at that time, the term sexual harassment, it didn't exist yet in popular terminology. It didn't exist at all. There was no talk of sexual harassment in the workplace. It didn't exist. And so you could say that she was a woman who was sexually harassing me. And, well, I mean, this kind of thing is very rare for a man to complain that way. And I didn't. But I got to say, her not wanting to be in a friendship with me when I lived within walking distance to her house, it clearly shows me that what I said is true. I was being victimized by another predator. Now, let me put this on pause for a second. I don't want to conclude by launching into what is basically a different subject. The fact that when you become a victim of a certain kind, it's almost impossible to escape being a victim everywhere. I've said ever since I was victimized by this father of mine who preyed on me during my adolescence, I've been unable to escape predator after predator after predator after predator. Each time I meet some new person who comes toward me with a smile, within no time I find it's another predator. Well, I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to end by saying it's peculiar that this Greek restaurant that I didn't go to again has figured in so importantly here. Now, here's a possible connection. I got a DNA test from National Geographic when National Geographic was offering this DNA test. It closed down this program it had a few years after it started. Why? I don't know, but National Geographic told me that my DNA was Greek Italian, meaning, as far as I understood from the explanation, that Greeks and Italians were indistinguishable in their DNA, apparently. And so I had always thought that I was half Italian, absolutely half, because my paternal side was completely Italian, so I should have been 50% Italian, and so I get this DNA test and I see I'm Greek Italian. And then this was years after the experience I had with this Greek restaurant, but I also discover over the years that I'm not exactly Italian. I'm Italian Jewish in heritage. And so this beautiful woman I saw outside the classroom, she was Jewish. And the woman I had the affair with, who was 27 years older than I was, she was Jewish as well. So there's the Greek restaurant and the two Jewish women, and the discovery I'm to make that I am Italian Jewish, or you might say Italian Greek Jewish, in DNA. All this symbolism is there in my experience. And let me just conclude by saying, I'm glad God showed me that. Oh my God, I suddenly realized the connection with 4 years in this experience. All these years later, I suddenly realized what it is. As it turned out, I came to the realization that I am not the biological son of this man who was sexually abusing me while I was growing up, and it was supposed to have been my father. I was not his biological son, and that's why he felt he was justified in male raping me the way he did. Well, I also have decided that 4 years was also not his biological son, and there is the unconscious world hinting the connection right there when I go out with this friend of 4 years in this peculiar way to this Greek restaurant, which becomes a kind of focus for all this symbolism. And as I say, there's the connection with 4 years. I'm going out with this friend of his, and let me say here that there's more to this symbolism, because the last name of this friend, what was it? Dennis, like dentist. And as it turns out, I have the teeth of this man who was not my biological father, who was male raping me, and I can get DNA proof from those teeth that I was not his son.